So new home sales data came out today, saw a sharp decline, almost 11% to an annualized pace of 603,000 now. It was better than consensus, but let's face it, a far cry from the almost 25% increase the prior month. Moreover, the 10-year chart clearly, it's breaking down. Those are new home sales over the last 10 years, and it looks like we're going down a lot more. I'm going to bring in George Gammon. George, you're considered to be a real estate guru among all the other hats you wear. How worried are you at how easily the Fed is breaking the housing market? And here's the thing. They keep talking about breaking other things. So as they're doing that, how much further will housing go down?
Well, I make very few predictions, Charles, but I think that home prices will go back down to levels we saw in 2012 when you adjust for inflation. That's their historic norm going back to 1900. So that's kind of my price point that I see as most likely. That's kind of my base case. Again, that's adjusted for inflation. To your earlier point, we're seeing a lot of softness in the housing market. I think the housing bubble has burst once again. We've got mainstream economists like Jeremy Siegel with Wharton coming out predicting 10 to 15% nominal price decline. Mark Zandi with Moody's came out and said that he sees 20%, and that's just over the next 12 months.
Right.
And like I said, that's just in nominal terms. You got to remember that we're running at about a 10%, an 8% CPI, but we all know the CPI is really the CPI, that the inflation rate's a lot higher than that. So say that we're actually running at 10 or 15% over the next 12 months. You combine that with a 20% decline across the board, and you're looking in real terms at a decline of 30, maybe even 35%.
Wow.
So I don't know that my base case is for prices to come down that quickly. But definitely, I think the housing bubble has burst.
So let's go further with the Fed then, because we're looking at spreads, the 2- and 10-year, the 3-month 10-year yield, both negative for the first time since August of 2019. Jay Powell told us to focus on the latter. He says the only curve that matters. So as the Fed starts to maybe get a sense that, okay, that their job is done, do you think they'll go through with all of the rate hikes, all of the harsh, hawkish rhetoric that they've been laying out?
Well, the market right now is predicting that they'll increase up to around 5%. They're at 3% now. So just taking that back to mortgage rates, I just saw that the 30-year fixed is at 7.2% as of yesterday or the day prior. So that means that if Jay Powell is able to get up to 5% like the market thinks, that puts mortgage rates at about 10%. 10%, just think about that. So we're already seeing softness all across the West Coast in nominal prices. What happens to prices if mortgage rates go up to almost double digits? I mean, it's just kind of unbelievable to think about that. And that's while unemployment is very, very low. So going back to what you're talking about with the inversion of the yield curve, that is a very powerful predictor of recession, especially when the 3-month and the 10-year invert like it has just a couple weeks ago. It did again yesterday, and it has been inverted throughout the morning.
George, let me jump in here for a second, and just because I got 30 seconds, and I like some of the things you do on Twitter with respect to mixing politics, geopolitical events, and the economy. And the notion that the media and politics ultimately might push Powell around the way they push Liz Truss around, the way they're pushing the new UK Prime Minister around. Well, do you think ultimately that might be the thing that stops Jay Powell from going too far? Well, I won't say too far, but as far as they would like to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of forces at play here. Look at the 30 Democrats that came out and asked Biden just to consider diplomacy, and they had to backtrack, 24 hours later. So there's some entities, there's some individuals that play behind the scenes that are very, very powerful. And I think those same entities that could have influenced the 30 progressive politicians could also heavily influence Jerome Powell when it comes to which way interest rates are going.
Great point. Yeah, you know what? By the way, Arthur Burns said as much while he paused, and he takes a lot of heat as being a terrible Fed president, chairman, but it was a behind-the-scenes pressure that made him blink. George, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.